Okay, well, good morning for all of you out there. I just wanted to say thank you very much for taking the time to attend one of our first webinars. My name is Mark Morrison. I'm with New Zealand Skills and Demand, and alongside me is Bore Chum from Migration Associates. Today we're going to be talking to you about life in New Zealand, certainly the opportunities out there for you from an employment perspective, but also I think more importantly for you to understand a little bit more about life in New Zealand, you know, how things really are out there. Both of us are Kiwis. We're actually speaking to you from London in the United Kingdom, where we're both based for work. Yeah, both have ties to New Zealand, and in fact, Bore, you're moving home next month.
Yeah, at the end of April, and very much looking forward to it. So what we'll do today is we'll have a presentation on New Zealand. I'm going to exit the room and Mark's going to present, and I'm going to be able to take any questions that you may have about the work, the lifestyle, etc. We would encourage you just to ask questions. I will do my best I can to actually answer those. And then once we finish the presentations, Mark will go through about how to obtain work in New Zealand and how he can facilitate that if you have the right skill set. And followed by that, I will go through the visa process, the visas you can apply for, and then we'll then have a Q&A at the end of it. So very much the session is designed for you to make the most of. No question's a daft question, just type away and we'll do as much as we can to answer those.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Bore. Okay, so we're going to jump across into the presentation now, so just bear with me for a moment. So hopefully up on your screen here you can see the beginning of our presentation. So before we do get into things, I do firstly want to thank a couple of our key partners, the Bank of New Zealand and also Migration Cover. Certainly without those two companies, we wouldn't be able to put this webinar on today. So certainly do want to thank both the Bank of New Zealand, who will be able to help you with opening a bank account before you move out to New Zealand very easily, and also Migration Cover, who are a fantastic business that we work with, and they can assist you with you know, your insurance side of the move. It's obviously a very daunting prospect moving from halfway around the world down to New Zealand, so it's always nice to know that there's someone there to, you know, look after you should the worst happen. So just a quick breakdown. Bore's already been over this briefly, so we're going to be looking at an overview of New Zealand. This normally takes around 40 to 45 minutes. Then I'll be putting my New Zealand Skills and Demand hat on and discussing the job search and recruitment process. Bore will then be coming into the webinar to discuss the visa process. And then, as we said, we'll open it up to a Q&A session at the end where we can go over some specific questions. But if you have any questions during this webinar, do just type them in, and Bore's on the other computer answering any questions you might have. So we're going to have a look at New Zealand in numbers. So New Zealand is a very small country. First and foremost, our entire population is only 4.5 million people. And about 1/3 of our population live in Auckland. Okay, so Auckland's our big city. It's not our capital city. Capital city is Wellington, but about 1/3 of the population live in Auckland, so around 1.5 million people. In terms of our breakdown, just hold on a sec. I think we might just be having some technical issues here, so just bear with me. Okay. Bear with us, guys. We're just getting this on board. We won't be a second here. You have to appreciate we're not IT experts. So hopefully you can see the presentation up on screen now. So that's all good. So in terms of our population, yeah, so around 70% of our population is of European descent. Okay, so that's a lot of our ancestry is actually from the United Kingdom. So our English, Scottish, Irish, and Welsh ancestry. Around 15% of our population is of Indigenous Maori. Okay, so that's a very important part of our culture in New Zealand, is the Indigenous Maori population. You'll see some very traditional photos and also some of the traditional tattoos, you know, and cultural side our Maori population. That's certainly celebrated in New Zealand. And if you've ever seen our All Blacks, our famous All Blacks rugby team, you would have seen a number of Maori and Pacific Island players on the team. We also have around about 9% of our population is of Asian descent. Okay, so when we talk of Asian descent in New Zealand, we're talking more the likes of China, South Korea, Japan, and the likes, as opposed to the subcontinent, India and Pakistan and the like. So weather's obviously a very important one that a lot of people do ask. So New Zealand generally has very mild temperatures, moderately high rainfall, and we do enjoy many hours of sunshine throughout the country. So New Zealand's climate is dominated by two main geographical features, the mountains and the sea. So New Zealand's a very long and skinny country, very narrow, so it doesn't take much more than 2 or 3 hours for the most part to drive from one coast, the east coast to the west coast. So very narrow, and we do have a lot of mountains, so therefore the weather's very, very changeable depending on where you are. Now, because we're in the southern hemisphere, January and February are our warmest months. That's summertime for us. So normally Christmas Day and New Year's is spent at the beach having a barbecue, and July is our coldest month. Okay. In summer, the average temperatures ranges between 20 and 30 degrees Celsius, and winter down around 10 to 15 degrees. So Auckland, a lot of you will be focusing your attention on Auckland, no doubt. So Auckland has a warm, temperate climate, so certainly more tropical in the north of New Zealand. So there's more hot, humid summers and more, more of a mild, damp winter. Certainly compared to parts of Canada, you'll find that Auckland doesn't really have a winter. It's certainly the warmest main centre of New Zealand and is also one of the sunniest, with over 2,000 sunshine hours per year. Christchurch has a much drier climate, so Christchurch is on the east coast of the South Island. That's where Bora and I are both from. It's more of a temperate climate, so the average daily maximum temperature is around 22.5 degrees and in the summertime, and down to around 11 degrees during winter. Okay, so in winter it's common for the temperature to fall below 0 degrees at night, but it will typically come out on one of those nice, clear, crisp winter's days with a nice blue sky. So you can certainly still get out and enjoy the outdoors. If we look at some, things like average annual rainfall, we did some comparisons here. So Vancouver and Auckland, very, very similar in terms of average rainfall. But then if you contrast that with somewhere like Christchurch, you'll see that the average rainfall was about half. Looking at average temperatures, okay, so once again, Vancouver is actually colder than both Auckland and Christchurch, and as you'll see, Auckland, as we've already mentioned, is certainly our warmest city. In terms of actual sunshine hours, both Christchurch and Auckland top Vancouver in terms of total sunshine hours. So not much of a difference there, but I guess overall what you're seeing is, if you're comparing moving from somewhere like Vancouver to Christchurch, you're going to get half the rainfall, slightly warmer weather, and pretty much the same sunshine. And then if you're looking to move from Vancouver to Auckland, you're going to get a little bit more rain, a warmer temperature, and about the same sunshine. So probably, I could argue you'd come out on top with both those cities. So looking at housing, very important aspect of any move to any new city or country. So, we would always recommend that you would rent a property initially upon arrival into New Zealand. Most rental properties in New Zealand are unfurnished. Okay, so very basic in terms of furnishings. It's really only the basics like your, carpets, curtains, oven, maybe a freezer or something like that. But often things like, your loungewear, couches, fridges, you have to supply yourself, so that's something you have to factor into it. Rent is normally paid weekly, and 4 weeks bond is normally paid in advance. In New Zealand, the landlord pays the council tax or rates. Okay, so that that cost is included in the weekly rental price. So if you're looking on a website like Trade Me, or realestate.co.nz, the price that you see will be quoting a weekly amount, and it will cover the council tax or rates. So that's not an additional cost that you have to consider. In a lot of areas, the tenant doesn't have to pay for water usage either. So I know in Christchurch, that is actually made up of part of the rates, so you wouldn't be responsible for that. Somewhere like Auckland, it's a 50-50 split, so often the landlord will pay some of the water usage cost, and the tenant may pay some of that as well. So it pays to do your research depending on where you're going to be based. We would always recommend house and contents insurance as well, just to cover yourself. And as you would expect, it's just really a simple case of shopping around and finding the best deal that works for you. So in terms of rental prices, we've gone through and looked at some different cities within New Zealand, and then also more specifically some suburbs. So we'll look at the main ones really. They're all on your screen there to have a look at. These are from February 2016, so pretty recent. If we look at Auckland, okay, so the more desirable areas like Auckland Central, so in a suburb called Ponsonby, you're looking around 800 to 1,000 New Zealand dollars per week for a 3 to 4 bedroom home. Okay, North Shore of Auckland's a very nice area. Just across the Harbour Bridge in Takapuna, you're looking around $600 to $700 there. If you want to save a little bit of money, certainly out west in Auckland is a little bit cheaper, around $500 to $600 per week. Basically, with as you would expect with any city in the world, the closer to the central city you are, the more you're going to pay. The further out, you're obviously going to save money on rent, but you're going to spend more time commuting and things like that. If we come down to Wellington, reasonably affordable as our capital city, so around $600 to $700 per week there. And then Christchurch, where a lot of you may be considering as well, you're looking around $400 to $500 per week for a 3 to 4 bedroom home. Certainly Christchurch, the markets remain quite flat there in the last couple of years after the earthquake. There's not the shortage of property that there was 2 or 3 years ago. So in fact, homeowners have had to reduce their rental prices slightly in order to get their houses filled. So for you as the potential renter, certainly that's an advantage for you. That's a good thing. If you really want to make your dollar go a lot further, somewhere like Invercargill would be one of the cheaper places in New Zealand. There for around 240 to 250 New Zealand dollars per week, you're getting a 3 to 4 bedroom home. So if and when the time comes to buy a home, there's some things to understand and appreciate. A lot of urban homes are standalone because we've got a lot of space. Normally houses are standalone and have their own section of land, and we use a lot of wood in our construction in New Zealand. So a lot of good timber, a lot of good forest, so we make use of that in terms of the construction of our homes. You'll probably find New Zealand homes are quite cold compared to what you're accustomed to. So a lot don't have central heating and even in some cases double glazing. However, all new homes are well insulated, are double glazed, and a lot of the older homes are retrofitted with double glazing these days. It's easy to get information on property. Obviously everything's online these days, but there is still special property features in the Wednesday and Saturday newspapers, as well as specific real estate magazines with latest listings. Open homes are run on the weekends and on Wednesdays a lot of the time as well. That's where the listing agent will open the property for 30 to 45 minutes, and members of the general public can file through the home and take a look. Of course, you can schedule a private viewing, but most of the time things are done through the open homes. So there are, of course, special conditions, subject to in the purchase of a property, things like a building inspection, the limb and title, and getting your finance organised. But there aren't big chains like there are, in other countries. So it means that the deals don't fall over quite as much as certainly what we see here in the UK. I'm not too sure what it's like in Canada on that front. Auction is a really common way of buying and selling as well. So basically you would be going unconditional. At the fall of the hammer, you'd be paying 10% of the purchase price.
Just go. I think, Cara, you had a question about the rental cost. We'll just go back to that one. Unfortunately, we don't have a one-bedroom cost analysis there, but a lot of people who are renting one-bedroom houses may go into a shared accommodation. So you'll be renting a house for different people, in which case, if you're sharing a three-bedroom house in Whangarei, you would split that rental up between three people, depending the sizes of the room.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, TradeMe would be our recommendation. If you go to trademe.co.nz, it's very easy just to navigate through that website and just filter through. So you only have perhaps a 1 to 2 bedroom or 1 bedroom only search, and that will give you the information that you need. So looking at the median house prices, very similar really to the cost of rental properties. As you can see, Auckland by far and away is the most expensive city at around 720,000 New Zealand dollars. If we go down to Wellington, just under 400,000, in Christchurch around 425, 430,000 seems to be about an average, price there for a house sale. And once again, Southland, you're looking under 200,000 as an average price there. So these figures are just off the Real Estate Institute website, reinz.co.nz. So healthcare. New Zealand public healthcare system provides free public hospital treatments, healthcare during pregnancy, as well as childbirth. So as well as subsidies on GP visits and also prescription medicines. So there are 40 public hospitals throughout New Zealand. And I think this is one of the benefits, one of the real positives of life in New Zealand, things like healthcare, schooling, education, there's not the strain on resources, that there are in bigger countries with big populations. These sorts of things are very well funded in New Zealand, and we have a fantastic scheme called the ACC, which is the Accident Compensation Corporation, which basically means your employer will pay an ACC levy, okay, and if you happen to be injured whilst you were at work, or even out on the weekend, playing soccer or out skiing in the mountains or anything like that, and you injured yourself and you are off work for a length of time, ACC would actually cover your lost income of up to 80% of your normal take-home pay, as well as getting you through all your rehabilitation and physio, etc., etc. Private healthcare, of course, many New Zealanders still elect to have private healthcare insurance for immediate treatment of non-urgent conditions. Okay, so there's a wide range of insurance policies with different premiums, as you would expect, and healthfunds.org.nz is a great website to go to look at more information on the different providers. Those that take out private healthcare are still entitled to the free public health services, for urgent accident and emergency type care. The basic cost of healthcare, so if we look at a GP visit, those aren't not at school, so under 6, often a doctor won't charge for that. Those during the school years, looking around $10 to $25. Adults are looking between $15 and $65, and 45 and above may get a slight discount, so between $15 and $35. Prescriptions, 6 and over, you're looking at $15 maximum, and those under 6 are generally free. One thing that is more expensive in New Zealand is the dentist. So a standard checkup, x-ray and clean, you're looking at $75 upwards. So it might pay to go to the dentist at home before you head out to New Zealand. One thing I always say to people is with the GP side of things, there's a big range there. If we look at 17 to 44-year-olds, $15 up to $65 for a visit, that's a big range. The thing to understand is that there's not an expectation that you have to go to your local doctor. Okay, so if you go to a GP when you first arrive in New Zealand and then you happen to move across the city, there's no need for you to go to your new local GP. You can maintain that relationship with your current GP. You have the right to shop around and choose a GP that suits you and your needs best. Okay, we're going to have a look at education now. I'm sure that there are a number of you watching in today who have children or may be having children in the future, so this is very important. So schooling is compulsory from the ages of 6 through to 16. However, most children commence school after their 5th birthday. So we don't really wait until the beginning of the school year or the beginning of the term. Most kids, when they turn 5, in the few days after that time, they're off to school. So there's always new little kids joining the new entrance class. Free secular education is available. Okay, so government or state schools, as we call them, from years 1 through to 13. And our system of qualifications and study is the NCEA. Okay, and that certainly becomes most important in years 11 through to 13 with final exams and university entrance and things like that. So we'll cover that off shortly. A lot of schools have zoning as well, so especially, you know, the big cities, so Christchurch, Auckland, Wellington, they will certainly have zoning for the schools, which means that if you live within the school zone, that school must accept your child into the school. And if you live outside of the zone, then it can be quite difficult because there will be limited spaces. What this means is that there is a flow-on effect to the property market. Those more desirable schools mean that the property prices are certainly higher, both in terms of buying and selling and also on the rental side. So do your research into this. Most schools provide their school zone as a PDF file on their website, so it's pretty easy to find that sort of information. In terms of the term dates, so our school year runs on the calendar year. Everyone has a big break over the Christmas New Year period because it's summertime. So December, January, a lot of businesses wind down. You know, kids are off school for 6 to 8 weeks. So school starts end of January and goes through to Easter time, so around April, and then back into things April through to July, and then term 3 begins July through to mid-September, and then term 4 is mid-October through to early to mid-December, depending on the children's age. So if we look at the breakdown of the primary and secondary schools, primary school is years 1 through to 6, so from the age of 5 through to 10. Then we're looking at intermediate, which is years 7 and 8, so that's for our 11 and 12-year-olds. A lot of schools combine primary and intermediate. So certainly in my case, when I was at school, I was at the primary school from years 1 through to year 8. At which point you head off to high school, so years 9 through to 13. And as I mentioned before, NCEA levels 1, 2, and 3 are the official qualifications, and certainly in year 13, that's all about getting that university entrance there as well. There are some smaller rural schools that will combine all school years into one school. However, in most cases, it's more normal for those in the high school years to perhaps be a boarder and stay in a city school and perhaps commute home in between the terms back to the countryside. In terms of universities, so we have 8 universities and 20 polytechnics and institutes of technology. Government subsidies and student loans are available. This is really important to understand in terms of what visa you're on in New Zealand and what study rights you may have, either for yourself and certainly your children. And this would be a good one, that you can speak to Bore about, in terms of work visas versus residency and your rights to study in New Zealand. Study is relatively cheap in New Zealand, so a student loan or fees for a first year full-time arts or even business degree is around about 3,000 New Zealand dollars, and even something like a medical degree, you're only looking at about 10,000 New Zealand dollars for a first year full-time fee. There's some useful websites here as well, which you can do some further education. Just as a note, we'll be making all of the websites that you see throughout this webinar available to you. So we'll email you links to all these websites just in case you don't have time to catch them all and write them all down. Okay, so next up is looking at New Zealand and driving. Okay, so our New Zealand driver's license. The minimum age to apply is 16 years old, so relatively young. However, it actually used to be 15. So when I was much younger than I am now. It was 15 years old when you could get your learner license. So the 3 stages you go through is a learner license, a restricted license, and then your full license. You can actually get right through that process in about 18 months should you choose to do a defensive driving course, which is a theory course in New Zealand, and that cuts the time you're on a restricted license from 18 months down to 12 months. So by the time you're 17 and a half, you could be a fully licensed driver in New Zealand. New Zealand's got one of the highest car ownership rates in the world, actually, per head of capita. So we really do rely on the motor vehicle. Our public transport isn't what it is in other parts of the world. And, you know, people want to get in to the outdoors. They want to have their freedom on the weekends. So, you know, having a car is very, very natural. If you have an overseas driver's license, which is current and valid, then you can drive on that for 12 months when you first arrive into New Zealand. And then at some stage you can just transfer that over to a New Zealand license. Now, if you had to go through the full test process, then it would cost around 160 New Zealand dollars. However, the feedback we get and the research we've done, we understand that it will only cost you around $50 if you are surrendering your Canadian license to get your New Zealand one. So worst case around 160, but it should be about 50 New Zealand dollars. Okay, cost of living. This is probably the biggest question that we get, and you know, this is one of the hardest ones to answer, of course. You know, how is the cost of living in New Zealand compared to where I live? Am I going to be able to, you know, sustain a good lifestyle? Am I going to be able to afford, you know, things that I'm accustomed to, you know, having and consuming in my current situation? Look, unfortunately, until you start living in New Zealand, it will always be hard to get a true feeling of how things are. But, you know, we are going to do our best to try and help you with your education on this one as well. So I think the thing to understand is that some things in New Zealand are going to be more expensive than what you're accustomed to in Canada. And the reason that is number one, we're a long way away. Okay, so to actually physically ship goods and down to New Zealand, you know, that comes with costs, and those costs are passed on to the end consumer. And secondly, on top of that, because we're a small nation, we don't have, you know, the economies of scale on our side. So, you know, we're buying in less bulk than other countries, so therefore it's going to be relatively more expensive. We have GST, goods and services tax, on goods and services of 15%. Okay, and New Zealand tax rates on our personal income are less than the OECD average. So I think it's from about 14,000 to 40,000 New Zealand dollars. You're only taxed at about 17.5 cents in the dollar. But it's very easy to find that information out online. You can just go to the IRD, which is the Inland Revenue Department, to look at the tax rates. There's also a website which we've found called Numbeo, which compares the cost of living in 2 cities in the world. You can just put a comparison in between any 2 cities. So I had a look at cost of living in Christchurch versus Vancouver, and it basically says that you would need about 5,230 Canadian dollars, the equivalent of in Christchurch, to maintain the same standard of life you have with 5,400 Canadian dollars in Vancouver. Okay, that's assuming you rent in both cities. So a much of a muchness, really. It's marginally cheaper in Christchurch, but you know, really not too much different there in the overall scheme of things. So some general costs. So the price of petrol is hovering sort of either side of $2 per litre for 91 octane petrol. $1, well, this is not so relevant to you, but a postage stamp to the UK is $1.90, so it will be very similar to send a letter back to Canada. We love our coffee in New Zealand, so even the hardest blokes in New Zealand will still be, you know, quite often a big coffee drinker. A flat white coffee in a cafe is around $4 to $4.50. Washing machines, so a front loading machine, you're looking around 800 to 3,000 New Zealand dollars. And a top loading machine, you're looking at 500 to 1,700 New Zealand dollars. Televisions, not too bad here. So, you know, one of the big brand 40-inch flat screen TVs, you're looking between $600 and maybe $1,000. Okay, a really good website to have a look at home appliances, whiteware, televisions, and things like that is a website or a company called Harvey Norman. So have a Google of Harvey Norman and you can get an understanding of how much some other general household items might cost. Okay, we also did a grocery supermarket comparison shop. So we went online to Loblaws, which we understand is a fairly standard supermarket chain in Canada. We could be completely wrong, so let us know if we are wrong. And we just bought a fairly standard basket of goods. We also did the same with a New Zealand website, a New Zealand supermarket called Countdown. Okay, so if we look at that basket of goods, it came out to be in New Zealand dollars, $66.51. That same basket came out to be just shy of $80 Canadian dollars. Okay, if we look at the exchange rate, where one Canadian dollar buys you 1.11 New Zealand dollars, that 79.07 Canadian dollars comes out to be the equivalent of $87.56. So, you know, it is about $20 cheaper equivalent in New Zealand to buy the same basket of goods. You know, I'm always very conscious of these comparisons, so it gives you a basic understanding, but you know, really nothing more than that. I think one thing to understand in New Zealand as well is you'll have a lot more usable time on your weekends. You're not going to be quite as busy, so families or individuals and couples have a bit more time to shop around. So, you know, you actually might go to the butchers and then you might go to the, to the fruit and veggie shop and buy your fresh produce that way, and just go to the supermarket to buy your sort of more staple products. So having the ability to shop around will make your dollar go a lot further as well, which is always a good thing. So why move? Well, there's obviously a number of reasons, but we've just pulled a few up for you to have a look at. So a 2015 Mercer Quality of Life survey ranked Auckland as the #3 city in the world in terms of that quality of life. So that was based on 39 key factors, things like housing, recreation, education, and the overall political environment. And in the 2015 Mercer Cost of Living survey, Auckland was ranked #61 in the world, where the most expensive city is ranked #1. So London, you're looking at #12, Sydney 31, Wellington 83, and Auckland, as I said, is our most expensive, but it only comes in at 61. So, you know, not too bad in the overall scheme of things. Economy and jobs. So recent job growth is expected to continue. There are 72,000 more people employed now than there were a year ago, and an additional 153,000 people are forecast to be in work by mid-2019. Okay, so that's pretty good growth for a relatively small population. I think unemployment's hovering around 5% at the moment. Education, so New Zealand 15-year-olds score, very well ahead of those in the UK on things like reading, maths and science in a United Nations Human Development Report from 2015. And social political, so New Zealand is the least corrupt nation in the world, tied with Denmark, according to Corruption's Perception Index. Landscape, a lot of similarities, I think, between Canada and New Zealand. What you'll find is that New Zealand is just a scaled down version that's very compact, which means you can get, from the beaches to the rainforest to the mountains to the lakes, within a matter of minutes or, a couple of hours type thing. So it's all very easy to access. In 2008, TripAdvisor named Milford Sound as the world's top travel destination based on an international survey. New Zealand always ranks really highly in any of those polls as a must visit. So New Zealand's population, just to give you an understanding, is the same size as the United Kingdom, but only has about 4.5 million people living here. So, you compare that to somewhere like the UK, where there's over 60 million. And only about 5% of New Zealand's population is human. So the rest are animals. So we certainly do have a lot of space. And more people live in Auckland than in the whole of the South Island as well. Innovation. So New Zealand is the only country in the world where all the highest positions have been simultaneously held by women. In 2006, the Queen, the Governor-General, the Prime Minister, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and the Chief Justice were all women. In 1893, New Zealand became the first country to give women the right to vote as well. So we're certainly a very equal opportunity country. I love this quote: no matter where you are in New Zealand, you're approximately 15 minutes from somewhere spectacularly beautiful. And Roger Stone was an individual that Migration Associates and New Zealand Skills and Demand actually helped relocate from the United Kingdom out to Christchurch in 2012. He loves it out there. He's 30 minutes drive from the beach and just over an hour from the ski field. So yes, in Canada, you know, you've got the luxury of being able to access the mountains and the sea. You can do that in New Zealand as well. So why move? Well, it's the three B's really. The boat. So you know, a lot of people have access to a boat. If they don't own one, certainly a friend or family member might have a sailing or powerboat or motorboat. We love to get away on the weekends and stay in the batch, the holiday home. And also we enjoy cooking on the barbecue, enjoying the warm summer evenings, you know, the long daylight hours, and you know, it just really fits in with our relaxed mentality and way of life. So that sort of wraps up the first part of our webinar today, looking at, you know, the general sort of trends and the general information in terms of life in New Zealand. What I'm going to do now is put on my recruiter's hat from the company that I run up here in the United Kingdom, New Zealand Skills and Demand, and we're going to be looking at the process of seeking employment in New Zealand and how you might go about that. So just to give you some background, we are a New Zealand-based company, so we have an office in Christchurch in the South Island of New Zealand, and we also have a full-time presence up here in the UK. So alongside myself, I have Guy Lemon, our candidate manager, who's pictured on the left of the screen there, and then Suze Dyson is our assistant candidate manager. She keeps Guy and I out of trouble as best she can, and we're, you know, based in the UK full-time. Assisting people from all over the world. So we're placing people from South Africa, obviously Canada, and different parts of the UK and Ireland as well. I think a real strength of our business is also our New Zealand account manager, Glenn Davis. So he's based in Christchurch full-time. His job is to establish and maintain relationships with companies who have skills shortages. They can't find New Zealand applicants to fill roles, and so therefore they need, you know, assistance with finding overseas candidates. And he is also there to help you, the candidate, upon your arrival into New Zealand. So that's the main function for Glenn. We work with large reputable companies and who are well established. Just as you have a lot of unanswered questions when it comes to migrating to New Zealand, trying to get a job, all those things, the New Zealand companies are exactly the same. You know, it's very daunting for them to employ an overseas candidate. They might not know how to do it, and quite often they just put it in the too hard basket. You know, with our help, we're able to educate them on the process, the interview process, all the paperwork. You know, Bore spends a lot of time as well speaking to employers and educating them through the process. So we try and make it as simple as possible. We've helped over 400 candidates make this move in the last 3.5 years, so we've got a really good understanding as to how it all works. We understand where the hurdles are, you know, where you can potentially trip up in this process, and we're here to make it as stress-free as possible. It will still be stress-free, but we're here to make it as easy as we can. So a big part of our company's focus is the Christchurch development. This is a huge project, so we're talking 40 billion New Zealand dollars, and we're 5 years on from the quake now, and we're only about 30 to 40% of the way through the rebuild. So we've still got another 10 plus years, we think, to go. Now, 40 billion New Zealand dollars is a lot of money to be flowing around a very small city of 350,000 that Christchurch is. Okay, there's not a shortage of money. This is a well-financed development, through local government, through central government, through insurance money, through local and overseas investors. So the money's there. What we don't have is the skilled labour and the skilled workers to undertake these projects. So we need thousands more skilled tradespeople to flow into the city over the next few years to help. And they're expecting that the peak is going to be around 2017, probably 2018, something like that. The central city is being largely redeveloped and rebuilt. So there are a number of key anchor projects and precincts that have been planned for and announced. These are things like hospital developments, new bars and restaurants, central libraries, law and order precincts, so ambulance, the courts of justice, the central police, all those things are going to be in little hubs. Sports stadiums, community areas, things like that. Now, only about 3 of the 18 key projects and precincts have actually commenced. So the other 15 have yet to start. So you start to get an understanding as to how much work there is to be done. There's a lot of work happening on the residential front as well, so a lot of new homes being built, and then a lot of repair and also development of horizontal infrastructure. So that's things like sewage, drainage, new roads, new bridges, motorways, all really to bring Christchurch up to be a fantastic small modern city on the worldwide stage. I think for any of you who have visited Melbourne in Australia, there's a lot of talk that Christchurch will become a small Melbourne, and Melbourne is consistently ranked one of the more livable cities in the world. So if that's the case, then Christchurch is going to be fantastic as well. What do I need to do to get a job? So I think first and foremost, getting your CV in order is probably an obvious comment, but a very, very important one. So if you're unsure as to how to attack your CV, how your CV should be read, we can provide you, and we will be providing each and every one of you with a free New Zealand style CV template after today, so you can adapt your information into that document. It's really important that your CV reads in a way that a New Zealand recruiter or employer will understand who you are and your work history and skill set. We also get all of our candidates that we're assisting to complete one of our skills in demand candidate briefing and declaration form, which is our CBD. Okay, that just gives us some background information on your situation in terms of your family situation, your time frames, qualifications, and that complements your CV very, very well. You'll need to start getting things like written references from former employers or clients that you've done work for, as well as electronic copies of qualifications, licenses, tickets, degrees, diplomas, anything like that. So make sure you get references and qualifications scanned and ready to go so that you have them on file. Also, you need to have a Skype username. So New Zealand Skills in Demand assists you to undertake interviews. Now, the theory is that you don't have to visit New Zealand to undertake these interviews. So Skype is the obvious way for you to undertake the interviews. This week we've got about 5 individuals having interviews, 4 from the UK and 1 from Canada. It makes things much, much easier, and it saves you having to fly out to New Zealand to undertake interviews. So if you haven't used Skype, download it. It's a free program. Get comfortable with how it works. Lastly, but most importantly, you need to understand and commence the visa process. Okay, this is really important because a New Zealand employer will want to know that you understand the process and that you have a game plan in place. Okay, and Bore's going to talk you through this shortly, but a New Zealand employer doesn't want to wait 6 months for you, generally speaking. So our clients will wait 2 to 3 months for you, which is normally about enough time for you to do your medical, lodge your visa, wait for that to come through, and pretty much book your ticket and get on the plane. So that's why it's important to understand the visa process before you go into that recruitment and interview process. So the skills that are in demand across New Zealand currently. Okay, now what I want to, for you to understand is that New Zealand Skills in Demand, we're just one company. Okay, so we're a small local company, and this is the demand that our clients are seeing currently. These are the occupations that we need to fill. So if your occupation is on this list, of course we want to hear from you after today. We want to see your CV. We want to understand your situation. So you'll see massive construction and trades focus. Outside trades and construction, IT roles, chartered accountants, management accountants are certainly in demand as well. So what I want you to understand is that if your occupation is not on this list, please don't despair. Please don't give up on New Zealand. The economy is very good. Other industries are going very, very well, and there is work out there for you. You're just going to have to find another channel, another pathway. So, you know, we're certainly still happy to see your CV. We can give you some advice where to go, all those sorts of things. You know, certainly happy to do that for you. So the process. So if I was to leave you with some overall tips and advice, number one, learn about New Zealand. Decide it's actually a country that you're committed to moving to. Okay, understand what you're in for. You know, be very realistic about any potential issues. You know, if you have a house to sell, well, you're probably going to have to get that sold before you commit to the job hunt process, because as I mentioned, employers don't want to wait for too long for you. If you can rent it out, then that's probably a great option, because it allows you to have a house to fall back on here in Canada, and allows you to get out to New Zealand and commence your life out there. You need to think about selling vehicles, winding down businesses, talking to employers or business partners, also talking to your children, okay? Especially if they're at, say, high school age, they might be quite settled with their friends. Examinations and things like that are important as well. So, you know, make sure that they're comfortable with the move. As well as that, thinking about your parents, okay? If you have elderly parents and you're, you know, many hours away from them on a plane ride or 2 plane rides, you know, are they going to be okay without you? Do they have a support network around them? Next thing is you need to work out when you can arrive in New Zealand. So you have to be realistic about this one, and you need to work backwards from that ideal arrival date. Okay, and that's normally when you would want to start that recruitment process, maybe 2 to 4 months in advance of the month you're able to arrive in New Zealand. You need to start gathering documents. Okay, so getting the checklist through to skills and demand, you know, getting those references, getting your qualifications scanned and on PDFs. Engage with an immigration advisor. Okay, talk to migration associates. Understand what visa you apply for. You know, that will work for you, so that when the time comes, you're able to move forward with that visa application. Also, speak to our helpful partners. Okay, as I mentioned before, Migration Cover and the Bank of New Zealand are 2 of a number of fantastic partners that we work with, who can help you with the move. And, you know, they're really, really important pieces to the puzzle. You also want to, you know, I guess when you get to the end of the process, you can hopefully book your tickets and get on the plane to a better lifestyle and a fantastic opportunity. So, you know, all the above points probably look relatively easy when you just read them, but as I'm sure you can appreciate, you know, there are a lot of stresses and it can be quite nerve-wracking. So hopefully we can do our best to help you through those steps so that you can be as relaxed and stress-free as possible. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is actually pass you over to Bore, and he's going to jump in now and discuss with you the visa and immigration process. Okay, so just hold on one moment.
Thanks, Mark. Listen, the process to get a visa in New Zealand, when compared to other countries, is mainly job-led. Okay, so what I mean by that is that you need a job offer to get through the visa process, and that achieves a couple of things. Number one, that you are going to be a benefit to New Zealand, and that you're going to be paying taxes, obviously, to make sure that the cost of you staying in New Zealand are met by the government. So, by yourself, if that makes sense. So, who are we, Migration Associates? We're based in the UK, and as you at the start of the presentation, I'm going to be heading out to New Zealand permanently from the end of April, and we'll set up an office in New Zealand. So we'll have both the UK and New Zealand office open, which is great. We have 3 licensed immigration advisors as part of the company. Hopefully we look to add another one in New Zealand, and we've assisted over 1,000 families and individuals work and live in New Zealand. What differentiates us with a lot of other companies, that we specialise only in New Zealand immigration. Okay, and one of our key relationships is the relationship that we have with New Zealand Skills and Demand, because it's job-led immigration, i.e. you need that job offer to get through the visa process. So we're helping New Zealand skills demand candidates get through, but also seeing a demand in other occupations outside of skills demand, such as healthcare, such as IT, who are getting jobs from outside of New Zealand, and these candidates are applying for visas and getting through the process. So the start that we need to make with an applicant such as yourselves is to complete an evaluation for you. So after this presentation, we'll send you a link to our online visa evaluation form, and once we have that, we'll set up a Skype call with you and complete what we call a comprehensive New Zealand visa eligibility evaluation. That confirms the costs of the visa that you'll be applying for and the type of visa. Okay, so in that Skype conversation we'll have with you, we will get a sense of what type of visa is best for your circumstances, and then we will then put together that evaluation and have that sent over to you by email. Now, if you're an occupation that Mark and the guys from Skills in Demand can assist with in terms of getting employment, we will provide them with what's called an immigration report, and that sets out that you're able to apply for a visa and the timeframes that are involved. Now, that immigration report is very helpful and important to Mark and his team because it sets out your eligibility. Okay, so I'm going to run through the visa types, not all of them, but I'm going to go through them quite quickly. And again, in our Skype call, if you would choose to complete our evaluation, we'll go through the visas that will be applicable to you. So the best visa that you can get, in our opinion, is the skilled migrant category visa. It's a residency visa. It's points based on capacity and building factors such as qualifications, work experience, age, etc. So we'll go through your points, okay? But in most cases, you need a job offer to get through the visa process. So there's no point in lodging what's called an expression of interest if you don't have a job offer. You need to be between the ages of 20 and 55 and be of good character and obviously have an acceptable standard of health. Okay. In order to lodge an expression of interest, you need 100 points or more. But again, for us, the way we're assisting our clients is that you realistically need that job offer to get through the process with 100 points or more. There is a selection criteria, and then once you meet that selection criteria, i.e. have the job offer in place, you will then be invited to apply for residency. Applications lodged here in the UK are looking at 1 to 4 months in processing, which is great. Okay, and there were some changes last November, which meant that people outside of Auckland getting job offers were getting more points. And I see that as an initiative from the government to encourage immigration into New Zealand, and also to encourage people to live outside of Auckland. Okay, so that's the best visa to get residency. Now, there is another visa that you can get residency from. That's the work to residency visa from an accredited employer. You must have an offer of employment that is full-time for 2 years or more. The employer must be accredited. You must be earning 55k or more per annum, New Zealand dollars. You need to meet the health and character requirements. And once you've worked for 24 months in the role with the accredited employer, you can then apply for residency. It's approved within 15 days. So the difference between this one here is that you get this straight away, whereas this one here you need to wait for 24 months and then apply for residency. So I think this one here suits the families more, whereas the work to residency suits individuals or couples, okay, because you can try before you buy, okay. Now, in most cases, once you've got a job offer, you're going to need a work visa to get through the process so that you can start work quite quickly, okay. So in order to get a work visa, like the two other visas, you need a job offer in place from a New Zealand employer. You have to have qualifications and work experience related to the role. There must be no New Zealand citizens available for the role, so that's the labour market test. Again, as with most visas, you need to have a good standard of health and also meet the character requirements. The validity of the actual visa will depend on the occupation and location. So it could be valid for 5 years, 3 years, or even 1 year. Okay, now, if you are successfully granted a work visa and you are required to work with employer A, you get to New Zealand, you can change employers. If you get a job offer with an employer B, what you need to do is vary the conditions of your work visa. Okay, it's a simple process done in New Zealand, but nonetheless, it's still a process. So if you think that you got a job offer with employer A and you're stuck with them for the rest of your time there, that's not the case. You can vary the conditions of your visa to work for employer B. Now it's a process within 20 working days. Okay, and there have been recent changes in Canterbury where across the board you will get a 3-year visa as opposed to a 1-year visa or whatever it may be, and that you can work for any employer in New Zealand in a role. So there is a freedom of movement. Okay, in Canterbury your visa is not linked to one single employer. What you're required to do is work in that employment, in that occupation for any employer within the Canterbury region. Again, this is seen as a positive step by the government to make sure that the Canterbury Rebuild is done very quickly, and to allow and facilitate that labour market in Christchurch. If you're under the age of 31, Canadian citizens will be able to actually apply for a 12-month working holiday visa. This slide is more focused at British citizens, but the Canadian citizens can get a 12-month working holiday visa, and that would mean that you could work for any employer on a fixed-term contract for 12 months. You can convert the work visa, the working holiday visa, into a work visa or residency once you're in New Zealand. So it's a great stepping stone visa. Like I said, you can work in any occupation that's approved within 2 to 5 days. So if you're under 31, I would encourage a working holiday visa for you to apply for that, and then for you to then convert into a work visa residency once you're in New Zealand, and that's something where our New Zealand office can help out with. Okay, so I think for all of you, you need to put together an immigration strategy and understand how all the visas work together, and we would then put in place that immigration strategy, give you advice on what we need in terms of documentation, etc., to make the process go through smoothly. And it's important for you to understand the timeframes and the costs for budgeting purposes. Okay, you may apply for residency under the skilled migrant category and a work visa, or residency under the skilled migrant category and a work to residency visa. Okay, you may be applying for a working holiday visa and then a work visa. So we will go through this with you. I would be very careful to compare yourself with other candidates on forums, etc. You can't compare apples with oranges. So everyone has a different immigration strategy, and that would depend on your age, your circumstances, etc. So you need to understand that process, and we can help you with that. Okay. Now you will need to obtain medicals and police certificates. Okay. Now if you're looking to go to New Zealand within the next 6 months, I would definitely go get your police certificates. Whereas with the medicals, I would only obtain medicals once you've got a job offer. Okay. In all countries, there will be a panel of doctors that can undertake the medical, but we would obviously provide that advice to you, and you should only really do that once you've got a job offer in place. Okay. If you have got previous criminal convictions, please disclose those. Okay, full disclosure is required, and that disclosure will also be on your police certificate. So even if it's the smallest drink drive, or it could be something drunken disorderly, we've all been there and done that in terms of had some bad experiences, but you need to disclose these to us. Okay, that's really, really important, and it's very rare for people to actually fail the character requirements. Okay, it's very common for people to actually fail the character requirements because of non-disclosure of previous criminal convictions. In terms of occupational registration, I do believe that we do have an early childhood teacher. You would need to get New Zealand teachers registration before applying for roles. Okay, that process could take 3 to 6 months, so I would definitely go ahead and do that. It's an extra step in the visa process, but it's a process that needs to be undertaken before any New Zealand employer is going to look at you. And also, this is a process that needs to be finalised for your visa process. Okay, so we will go through whether or not you will need occupational registration. Why use Migration Associates? Listen, we are licensed by the New Zealand government to give immigration advice, and it's actually illegal to provide advice if you're not licensed. We only take clients on if we think we can get them through the process, so that increases our success rate. Okay, and what we're here to do is make sure you apply for the right visa and avoid delays for you. Okay, It is a difficult process. There's a lot of time spent on other facets of the process. We're here to make sure that this whole immigration piece goes smoothly so you can concentrate on other facets of the move. We also have experience on what documents are accepted by Immigration New Zealand and have a lot of templates that you could use. Now, we will liaise with Immigration New Zealand and your employer on your behalf. So we'll take you out of that process. I've got a meeting with Immigration New Zealand tomorrow where they are going to be critiqued in terms of their processing of work visas, and collectively with all the licensed immigration advisors here in the UK, we're not very happy with them at the minute. So the point that I'm trying to make is Immigration New Zealand not always right, okay, and we're here to make sure that they do their job properly and provide them feedback with that, okay. The other thing that is really important, as alluded to before, would create an immigration strategy with you, deal with all the paperwork, and because of that will limit the time and money and stress levels that you deal with on this process. It is a stressful process, so we're not going to take all the stress away, but I can tell you that if the immigration part is dealt with, you can then concentrate on other facets of the move. And we also push you along with the process to minimise the delays. Now, my wife and I and my family, we're looking to head out to New Zealand, and we're Kiwis, and it has been a challenging process. There's a lot of to the move, and you know, I would definitely recommend that you get assistance with the immigration piece so you can concentrate on the other aspects of the move, because there's other aspects of the move that are very, very time consuming. So I'm keen to organise consultations with you all. You'll need to complete our online visa evaluation form, and we'll go through your eligibility, the cost and the timeframes, and what visa you should be applying for. It is, you know, a big decision to make, and sit down with us and go through and have all those queries addressed. In terms of keeping up to date with information, both New Zealand Skills in Demand and Migration Associates have various media channels, social media channels. Facebook is a fantastic way to keep in touch with us, understand our current events, and also understand, you know, and read some articles about what's happening in New Zealand. We've also got a Twitter page and also some fantastic photos on our Pinterest page. So I do encourage you all to have a look at those pages and like those pages to keep up to date with what's going on in New Zealand, because once you decide that this is what you want to do, it's important that you get educated with what's actually happening in New Zealand. And Facebook and our other social media channels are a great way to keep in contact. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do a Q&A session now. I know I can appreciate there's only a couple of you on this webinar. So you know, once we've finished with the Q&A, what we'll then do is send you an email with more information and the next steps forward, links to our key partners and how they can assist with the process. And also we'll send out a follow-up email with all the links to the websites that we've got on this webinar, and along with a recording of the webinar. So I think what we'll do is we'll kick off the Q&A session and go through this, and Mark and myself can read these. We can actually answer those live, can't we? So feel free to give us some questions and we can answer those verbally. Are there any questions? Okay, so I mean, perhaps maybe I've got a few questions. I mean, how many people are looking to go to live in New Zealand within the next 12 months? Okay, so well, we've got a question of Cara. Cara, the market in New Zealand is it really does depend on where you're going. Okay, the Education Gazette. So if you search Education Gazette New Zealand, that's a fantastic website on information about jobs in New Zealand and education. Okay, and that you will see a really good, you know, example of all the jobs that are available in the region. So that website, just search as Education Gazette.
Ismai's asking, what age can you include your kids on the main applicant visa?
Yeah, listen, at any age, so the main applicant will have a non-principal applicant, which will be the partner, and the children can be included in the application. Okay, so not a problem. In terms of age, the highest, the oldest that they can be is 25, but between 21 and 24, you must show that they're dependent, i.e. they're at university or they're still living at home, to be included in the application.
Okay. So Kara's looking to go out really soon, as is James, which is great. So I think James has been in touch with Guy already, so that's fine. So James, we would just suggest just get back in touch with Guy. I'm in the office with Guy, so one of us will be able to help you.
Yeah, I mean, 2018. That's fine. You need to get the ball rolling with this whole process to get out there, because the older that they get, the more harder it gets. Obviously, when they become their own individuals, but also to go over as a family unit. Once they hit 25, they'll need to apply in their own right. Okay, so we always advise people with kids that are a little bit older to get through the process ASAP, so you can include your kids in that application. Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll wrap up the webinar. I'd like to thank you very much for attending the webinar. And what we'll do is, if you have any questions, please direct them to us. We'll send you an email with the link to our online visa evaluation form, along with the links to all the websites, and then we'll take it forward from there. But any questions, feel free to contact us directly. I hope that we've been able to give you an idea of what it's like, what life is like in New Zealand, and how to kind of proceed with this process. And we're just excited that you're considering getting out to New Zealand. So on this basis, I think we'll sign off now, Mark.
Yeah, we might just have a question coming through from Kara, which we can quickly take, Kara. So I'm just waiting to see that pop up. What was your question there, Kara?
Yeah, I mean, just while Kara types away, just to give you an idea, the New Zealand economy is very stable at the minute. Job growth is still expected to occur over the next decade. Unemployment rate is around the 5 to 6%, which is fantastic. So if you're not on the list that Mark can help you with, don't be too despondent. On a migration associates perspective, we're also helping people get visas for other different roles that are not in construction, IT, etc. So it's just a matter of you independently looking for that work from other sources.
Kara, just asking, I see here about your partner who's a graphic designer. Look, just send your CV through to us after today, and we can have a look, and see if we can help. And if not, we'll certainly point in the right direction.
Yeah, and just lastly, the email that we'll send to you will also have a template of the New Zealand CV that you can use and adopt. So, listen, I think we'll wrap things up. It's been a fantastic opportunity to present to you today. We'll be in touch, and like I say, contact us directly, and we'll take things forward from there. And hopefully, we can get you into and see this fantastic scenery that you've got on your screen today. Thank you very much.